It was the morning of my son's 27th birthday. I woke up before sunrise just like I did every year. The first thing I did was light a small candle in front of his childhood picture. The one where he's covered in cake, laughing, holding my face in his little hands. Back then, his smile was my entire world. I still remember his first birthday. We couldn't afford much, but he was so happy with just a balloon and a slice of cake. That day, I promised myself that no matter what, I'd give him everything he ever wanted. I worked day and night, skipped meals, sold my jewelry when needed, just to make sure he never felt the struggles I went through. And now, 27 years later, my son had everything. A good job, a beautiful girlfriend, a comfortable life. Everything a mother could dream for her child. But deep inside, something about his happiness never felt like peace to me. Felt like distance. Still, I told myself, maybe he's just grown up busy with life. Children change, but love doesn't. So that morning, I started preparing for his birthday, cooked his favorite biryani, kneaded the dough for parathas, and baked the same chocolate cake I used to make when he was small. I decorated the living room. Balloons, candles, a few flowers from the garden. I even ironed the shirt he loved as a boy. The one he once said, "Amy, when I grow up, I'll buy you 10 of these." How easily children make promises they forget. I waited all day for him to arrive. Hours passed, the food got cold, and I kept looking at the clock, telling myself he'll come soon, he must be busy. It was evening when I finally heard the car. My heart jumped. He walked in, tall, handsome, grown, and beside him his girlfriend. I smiled wide, tears filling my eyes. Finally, I thought, he's here. But the moment I looked into his eyes, I felt something I'd never felt before. A distance, a coldness, like I was a stranger. I tried to hide my trembling hands as I served the food. He barely looked at me. He was busy scrolling his phone, laughing softly with her. Every time I spoke, she rolled her eyes. And every time she did, he didn't say a word. Still, I told myself, it's okay, he's young. I didn't want to spoil his special day. After dinner, when I brought the cake, I smiled and said, "Make a wish, beta." He looked at me, blank, emotionless, and said, "I already know what I want." I laughed nervously, but that laugh faded as soon as he said, "I want your insurance policy, Mom." For a moment I froze. I didn't understand. I thought he meant something else. Maybe he needed help? But when I asked, he said, "No, Mom. I want that policy. The one that gets paid when you're gone." The candlelight flickered between us. I could feel my heartbeat slow. I tried to smile, tried to make sense of his words. He looked away, embarrassed maybe, but his girlfriend looked straight at me with a smirk that said it all. That night, after they left, I sat alone at the table, his plate untouched. The candles melted down to nothing. The walls felt heavier than ever. I walked to my room, opened my drawer, and took out those papers, the insurance file. It wasn't a lot, just something I kept to make sure he'd be secure after me. I had written his name there long ago, as my only heir. But now, holding those papers, I realized something. He didn't want to wait for my love. He wanted to wait for my death. I sat there till morning, the papers in my lap, and tears that wouldn't stop. A mother never imagines her child wishing for her end, but mine had. And that truth cut deeper than any knife ever could. I spent that entire night thinking, where did I go wrong? Was I too loving? Too giving? Or was I simply blind to the monster I created with my own sacrifice? As the sun rose, I looked at the photo on my bedside, his little hands holding mine, his innocent eyes full of trust, and I whispered, "Where did that little boy go?" That night I didn't close my eyes. Every tick of the clock sounded like a question. How did it come to this? How did the boy who once kissed my hands and said, "Amy, I'll take care of you forever," turn into a man who now sees me only as an amount on a page? I kept replaying every memory, every small moment of love we shared. When he was 5 and had nightmares, he would crawl into my bed and sleep holding my dupatta tight. When he was 12 and failed a test, he cried on my shoulder, saying he didn't want to disappoint me. I had spent my whole life protecting him from pain, but I never knew. One day he would become the reason for mine. At dawn I made tea for myself. The house was silent. The smell of last night's food still hung in the air. A reminder that he left without even saying goodbye. I looked at his untouched plate and whispered, "You've already taken my sleep. Now you want my life too?" I opened the window, and for a moment I wanted to throw those insurance papers away. But I couldn't, because even after all that, my heart still whispered, "He's your son. Maybe he'll realize." Mothers never stop hoping, even when hope becomes a punishment. Later that week, I saw his girlfriend again. She came alone to my house. Her perfume filled the room before she spoke. She smiled sweetly and said, "Auntie, you should really think about the policy. It will secure his future." Her words felt like poison wrapped in honey. I looked at her, so confident, so sure that I would just sign away my life. And I understood then. It wasn't just him. It was her whispering behind him, turning my son's heart into stone. When she left, I went to my cupboard and pulled out an old wooden box. Inside were things I had kept safe for years. His first tooth, his school certificates, and a small envelope with my savings, money I had kept aside for his wedding one day. I held that envelope in my hand and smiled bitterly. All these years I thought I was building his happiness, but maybe I was building my own destruction. The next evening he called. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed. He said he needed to meet me to talk things over. For a moment my heart fluttered. Maybe he had realized his mistake? Maybe he was sorry? I dressed up simply, put on my shawl, and went to the cafe near his office. He was already there, sitting with her. They had ordered coffee and cake, as if it was a business meeting. When I sat down, he didn't even look at me. He spoke straight to the point. "Mom, I've thought about it. It's better if you change the beneficiary now while you're healthy. You don't need the money." Every word stabbed me like a needle. But I didn't cry. I just looked at him and said softly, "I see." Because sometimes silence is the loudest answer a mother can give. After they left, I sat there alone for a long time, listening to the sound of cups clinking, watching strangers laugh. I felt like a ghost among the living, a mother whose presence no longer mattered. That night I took the insurance papers out again. I signed them, not because he deserved it, but because I wanted peace. I wrote a small letter with it, folded it neatly, and kept it in the same drawer. The letter said, "To my son, if this money gives you happiness, then take it. I only pray you never have to face what I feel tonight, the pain of being unwanted by your own blood." I placed the pen down, closed the drawer, and turned off the light. But as I lay there in the dark, I couldn't stop thinking, maybe I just signed away the last piece of myself that was left. And that's how the night ended. Not with tears, not with anger, but with silence. A silence so deep that even my heartbeat sounded guilty. After I signed those papers, something inside me went quiet. It wasn't peace, it was emptiness. Like a candle that had burned too long, flickering only on the smoke of its own flame. The next few days were a blur. I went about my routine like a shadow, boiling tea, watering the plants, folding his old clothes that no one would ever wear again. The house felt different now. Even the walls seemed to whisper, "You gave everything away." I told myself I did the right thing, that maybe after getting what he wanted, he would soften, he would come back to me. But days passed. No calls, no messages, just silence. Every evening I sat by the window, watching other sons pick up their mothers, taking them for dinner, laughing together. And I wondered if any of them knew how lucky they were. Then one afternoon, I felt dizzy while making tea. The room spun. I gripped the counter, but everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. The nurse told me I had fainted. Blood pressure too low, stress too high. I smiled weakly, pretending I was fine. Because what could I say? That my own child had broken my heart so deeply, that even my body had started giving up? I told the nurse not to inform anyone. There was no one to inform. My son hadn't called in weeks. His girlfriend's number was switched off. I stayed in that bed for 3 days, alone, staring at the white ceiling, listening to the slow beep of the monitor. On the 3rd day, a doctor came and asked softly, "Do you have someone to take care of you?" I smiled and said, "I had once." When I came home, the silence welcomed me again. The same cold, heavy silence that had become my companion. I sat on my bed and opened my diary. It was an old notebook filled with memories. His first drawing, his childish handwriting, his silly poems he wrote for me in school. On the empty pages, I began writing letters to him, not to send, just to breathe. "Dear son, Do you still remember the lullaby I used to sing? Do you remember the nights you couldn't sleep without my hand on your forehead? Today I wish I could touch your heart the same way. Comet reminded of love. But maybe I don't live in your heart anymore. Every night I wrote a new letter. Some nights I cried. Some nights I just stared at the paper until the words blurred. Those pages became my only conversation. Weeks passed. I saw him once accidentally at a shopping mall. He was laughing, holding hands with her, buying expensive things. He saw me too, but he turned his face away. That moment broke something I didn't know was still alive in me. Not because he ignored me, but because he didn't even hesitate before doing it. When I came home that night, I burned the insurance copy. Not the real one, just the extra papers I had. I wanted to feel something burn, something that matched the fire in my chest. After that, I started feeling weak. My hands would shake, my vision blurred. But I didn't go back to the hospital. What was the point? There was no one to sit beside my bed. No one to say, "Amy, I'm here." So I stayed home. Just me, my letters, and a cupboard full of memories that hurt too much to touch. Some nights I prayed, asking God one question again and again. Why did you make a mother's heart so soft? Because even after all that, I still wished he'd come back. I still wished he'd call. I still wished he'd remember me. But wishes are cruel things. They give you hope, then leave you standing alone in the ruins of your own love. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. My health grew weaker, and so did my will to live. I had stopped cooking full meals. A cup of tea and some bread was enough. There was no one to feed, no one to wait for, no one to ask, "Amy, kanabana?" Some nights I sat near the window, watching the streetlights glow and fade. There was something peaceful about the silence, but also terrifying, because it reminded me that no one would notice if I disappeared. Then one evening, there was a knock on the door. It was soft at first, hesitant. I thought maybe a neighbor. But when I opened the door, it was him, my son. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. He looked different, thinner, pale, tired. And behind him stood her, the same woman who once smiled while asking me to give away my life. I wanted to smile, to open my arms, to forget everything and hold him tight. But something in me froze. There was no warmth left to give. He said softly, "Amy, I need to talk." His voice trembled. I nodded and moved aside. They sat down. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't notice the medicines on the table, or the wrinkles that had deepened from nights of crying. He just said, "Mom, we're planning to move abroad, but we need some money for the paperwork. You still have that insurance file, right?" I felt the world collapse around me again. After months of silence, after all that distance, he was here. Not for me, but for what was left of me. I looked at his face carefully. The same eyes that once sparkled with love. Now they looked empty, desperate, hungry. I wanted to scream, to tell him how much I had missed him, how I waited every day just to hear his voice. But instead I just said, "You already have it, Beta. You have everything." He didn't understand. He frowned, confused. She looked impatient. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. They didn't come to see if I was okay. They came to make sure I was still alive, because the money didn't come yet. When they left, I didn't cry. For the first time, I couldn't. Even pain gets tired after a while. That night I sat with my diary again. I wrote my last letter to him. It said, "My son, this is the last letter I'll ever write you. You won't find anger in these words, only silence. I don't blame you anymore. Maybe life hardened your heart. Maybe I made mistakes too. But remember this, I forgave you before you even asked. And when I'm gone, don't feel guilty. Just be kind to someone. Anyone. That will be my real gift." I folded the letter, put it inside the same box where his childhood photos were, and placed it near my pillow. Then I turned off the lights. And for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. The next morning, the sun felt warmer than usual. The birds outside were singing, and the world seemed calm. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched children playing on the street. Their laughter reminded me of him, the little boy who once ran into my arms, promising he'd never leave me. And even though the grown man he became forgot that promise, the mother in me couldn't forget the child he once was. That day I realized something important. Sometimes love doesn't die. It just learns to live quietly. without being returned. The night after they visited, I couldn't sleep again. But it wasn't pain that kept me awake. It was peace. A strange kind of peace that comes when your heart finally stops expecting anything. I looked around my room. The same walls. The same clock that had counted my loneliness. The same photo of him as a little boy smiling with cake on his face. It all felt like another lifetime. My body had become weaker. Every step felt heavy. Every breath a little shorter. But my mind was clear. So painfully clear. I knew my time was near. And somehow I wasn't afraid. When you've died 1,000 times in silence, death doesn't look scary anymore. It looks like rest. That morning I packed a small box. Inside I placed 3 things. The insurance file, the letters I wrote to him, and one old photo. Me holding him in my arms. Both of us laughing under the sun. I sealed it and wrote his name on top. Then I called the lawyer who had handled my papers years ago. I told him to give this box to my son when the time comes. He asked, "Are you sure?" And I said yes. This is the only gift left to give. For the next few days I stayed mostly in bed. Neighbors knocked sometimes, but I said I was fine. What could they do for a wound that was invisible? Then one afternoon, I felt an unusual calmness, like the whole world had gone silent just for me. I closed my eyes, and in that moment, I saw him, my little boy again, running toward me. His arms open, his smile pure. And I whispered, "I'm coming, Beta." The next morning, the postman found the door still open. The tea on the table was cold. The chair by the window was empty. And the mother who had once filled that house with life was gone quietly, gently, like a candle that finished its purpose. When my son received the news, he didn't cry at first. He just stood there, holding the lawyer's envelope in his hand. Inside was the insurance check, the thing he wanted the most. But under it was a note. It said, "To my son, this is the gift you once asked for. It only comes when I am no more. I hope now you understand what that truly means. Money can buy comfort but never peace. And peace was all I ever wanted for you. Love, Amy." The letter slipped from his hands. For the first time in years, he sat down and cried. Not the way men cry for loss, but the way children cry when they realize love doesn't wait forever. He went to her grave the next morning. The soil was still fresh. He placed the old photo, the one from the box, on the headstone, and whispered, "Amy, forgive me." But she was already free. Her silence forgave him long before he asked. Sometimes we realize too late that love doesn't demand, it gives. And when we take too much from a heart that only knows how to give, we end up with everything except peace. This was not just a story. It was a truth too many mothers live quietly, behind closed doors, with smiles that hide oceans of pain. Broken heart, this is my heart talks. Broken heart. Stories that speak when the heart can no longer hold the pain.